Hello there and welcome back to some more Forza Top Gear laps. Today we have to look at some modern muscle cars, the end of our muscle car trilogy. We begin with the 2009 Pontiac G8 GXP, 415 horsepower, 415 foot-pound torque, 4,023 pounds of weight. This is the least powerful car here today and the least torquey car here today, and that gives you an idea of some of the monsters you're about to see. The 80s, 70s, 80s, this is not. This is, we're back to cars with ridiculous amounts of power. In fact, there's cars here with just stupid amounts of power, too much power in quite a lot of cases. But the G8 is pretty tame compared to those. Of course, the G8 is a rebadged Holden Commodore from the land of Australia. We've got a couple of other Australian cars lined up for you here today. Of course, with Forza Horizon 3 being set in Australia, we kept a lot of the Australian cars. Although the Pontiac G8 was actually in the game in Forza Motorsport 4, and it just came back for 7 along with quite a few of the other Forza 4 favourites. I do quite like the G8, to be honest with you. I think it's a really good looking car. I like the fact it's a Pontiac, because Pontiacs are cool. I kind of like this weird green colour, although it's a very strange green colour. As far as the car goes to drive, honestly, it's really rather good for what it is, especially, you know, a muscle car saloon. It's pretty heavy, I guess, but the actual handling, performance, so on and so forth, it's pretty good. It's, you know, up there with sort of your German sports saloons and stuff. I mean, this one won't be as quick as, say, an M5 or something like that. But it's certainly not a bad car, and one you should probably have a quick look at yourself. Next up, we have the 2013 Shelby GT500, 662 horsepower, 631 foot-pound torque, 3,898 pounds of weight. Remember what I said a minute ago about some of these cars having too much power? Welcome to the GT500. This thing is a pretty nuts car. It is, of course, a Ford Mustang, which is hardly the most technologically advanced car in the world, with 662 horsepower, and it can do 200 miles an hour. This thing's pretty incredible. It's pretty nuts. I love it. I quite like the Shelby Mustangs. My favourite will always be the 07 GT500, which we've looked at previously. But this 2013 one, in case, in sort of terms of statistics and stuff, blows that one out of the water. This thing is absolutely insane. I also think it looks really rather fantastic as well. To sum it up, it's very fast, but let's get that out of the way first. It has got 662 horsepower. It flies. It's not the most aerodynamic shape in the world, but that doesn't matter. However, not only does this car sort of look like it's from 1968, it also drives like it's from 1968. It drives like an old school muscle car. If you've driven a 69 Charger or something like that and you want to jump into something that's way quicker and more modern but at the same time not, the GT500's a car for you. It's insane. I kind of like it, but at the same time I really am terrified by it and I wouldn't drive it by choice. Next up, we have the 2014 HSV Commodore Gen F GTS, 577 horsepower, 545 foot-pound torque, 4,147 pounds of weight. Remember the Pontiac G8 from earlier? Well, this car is its newer version. Of course, we do have the Chevrolet SS, which is technically the newer G8, but this is the hyped-up version of that, and it comes in purple. I mean, how could I not use this one? The HSV Commodore, a car I do quite like. I think it's a good-looking car. Certainly, of course, unfortunately, the Commodore is now dead, or at least in this term, you know, rear-wheel drive muscle saloon, it is dead. Yeah, I've always quite liked the Commodore. I'm more a fan of the Falcons, I've got to be honest, but yeah, the Commodores do look good, and I think this car really does look good, especially in this purple paint. It really does set it off. As far as it goes to drive, it's decent. It really is a decent car to drive. However, it's not quite as quick as you'd expect. It's got 577 horsepower. Granted, it does weigh 4,100 pounds, but I was expecting it to be a lot quicker than it was. In reality, acceleration-wise, honestly, it's not that much quicker than the G8, and that only has 415 horsepower. Yeah, it's I wouldn't say it's disappointing, because through the turns and everything, it's a really decent car, but just, it's not as quick as you'd expect, which is a bit weird. Next up, we have that car's rival, the 2015 Ford Falcon GT351, 471 horsepower, 420 foot-pound torque, 4,030 pounds of weight. And straight away, I do like the Ford Falcon. I think this is a good-looking car. It's not as good as the last-gen Falcon, as in the last Falcon they ever produced. I think that's a really, really good-looking car. But this one's pretty cool as well. I mean, it has sort of the black decals. Not really much a fan of those, but I can kind of understand it. I think if you paint it white, it helps out a lot. If you have this thing in some colours, it looks a bit stupid, to be honest. But I do like the Ford Falcon. It is a great car. I don't know, just something about the Falcon. I've always quite liked it, especially like the ones from the early 2000s, the really ugly ones. Yeah, I like them. As far as this Falcon goes to drive, well, you can already tell, statistically, it's heading to battle with the HSV a lot lower down the totem pole. It has 100 less horsepower, it has 120 less torques. It does weigh slightly less, but even still. But to be honest with even with that in mind, it's just not a great car to drive. It's not as good as the HSV in any situation. It doesn't handle as well, it isn't as quick. It's just not as good, which is, it pains me to say that because I like the Falcon a lot, but just in terms of the way it drives, I can't deny the HSV is a better car than the Falcon. Next up, we return to America with the 2016 Cadillac CTS-V sedan, 640 horsepower, 630 foot-pound torque, or 4,128 pounds of weight. Of course, you might quickly say, well, actually, the CTS is based on an Australian platform. No, it's not. This is a revised platform. The CTS, the Camaro, and the ATS, I believe, all run on the new platform now, which is good because the Australian platform was quite old. Although it's GM, it's probably not an entirely new platform. Anyways, enough about platforms. The Cadillac CTS, it's a good-looking car. I wouldn't buy one because I'm not particularly much a fan of Cadillacs. This definitely looks better than the previous generation to me, and also this definitely looks better than the Coupe, because the Coupe was an atrocious thing. I'm quite glad I don't think that exists anymore. Only this saloon, or at least in Forza. In Forza, I'm fine with that. Anyways, as far as it goes to drive, it's okay. The rear slides around quite a bit. It's definitely sort of more of an old school muscle car. One thing that does surprise me on this car, the brakes are pretty bad. As in, it really does take a while to stop this car. I know it weighs a lot, but so does the HSV, and the HSV got stopped way better than this does. It's not even so much an issue with the car being faster, it actually feels like it's genuinely an issue with the brakes just being bad, so I'm not quite sure what that's all about. Next up, we have the 2016 Shelby GT350R, 526 horsepower, 429 foot-pound torque, 3,660 pounds of weight. This is the lightest car here today. So of course, we saw the Shelby GT500 earlier, which is an example of how fast a Mustang can go if you stick a really large engine in it. And now we have the GT350R, which is an example of when you actually give the Americans a good platform and time to develop cars and don't have a madman screaming stick a big engine in it over their shoulders the entire time. The Americans can actually build a car that can handle the GT350R, a car I really like. I think it looks spectacular. However, it might look spectacular, but it drives even better. It is an absolutely awesome car to drive, this one. I adore the way this car drives. It is one of the best handling rear-wheel drive platforms you will find in this game. It's incredible just how much turning grip it has, the rear end stays planted, it's decently quick, it's got enough acceleration, so on and so forth. It's got the V8 growl to obviously let you know it is a Mustang. It's still got a big engine and all the rest of it, but they've actually matched the big engine with handling parts, which is great. It's, honest to God, this is a really good car. If you haven't driven the GT350R, yeah, you're a bit mental. Seriously, go drive it. It's fantastic. I really like it. Next up, we have the 2017 Chevrolet Camaro ZL1, 650 horsepower, 650 foot-pound torque, 3,883 pounds of weight. Of course, this car, well, I guess the ZR... Wait, which one is it? The ZR1 is the rival to the GT350R, and this is one step above that now, because the GT350R, there isn't a GT500 yet. I think that's how it works. Anyways, the Camaro ZL1. Chevrolet also somehow learned how to make cars handle at some point. Not quite sure when that happened, sort of around the Corvette C7, towards the end of the C6, I guess. The 2012 Camaro ZL1 is a great car to drive. It's one of my favourite muscle cars in this car to drive. Unfortunately, they didn't quite carry that over to the 2017, despite the fact you'd expect them to. I mean, you know, the 2012 on paper was a ridiculous car, 580 horsepower, but it handled really well. This, I mean, it's alright, it's very quick, there's no denying that. It's just a little bit wonky, which, it sounds strange, I can't really describe it, but just something about this car feels off for some reason. I expected it to handle like the GT350R and be way quicker, but it really isn't. It's just a bit of a mismatched, weird car to drive, so a little bit of a shame there. And finally today we have the mentalist of all of them, a 2018 Dodge Demon Fast and Furious Edition, 840 horsepower, 770 foot-pound torque, 4,248 pounds of weight. This is the most powerful car here today, the torquiest car here today, and the heaviest car here today, the Dodge Demon. Now, while Chevrolet and Ford spent a lot of time refining their muscle cars, making them handle better and not just go in a straight line, Fiat Chrysler sort of looked at that and went, but we could just stick a bigger engine in it, it'll go quicker and grab more headlines. And indeed it did. Welcome to the Dodge Demon, the car which is basically built for drag racing, but it's road legal, and it's stupid, and Chrysler should probably focus on making a handling car, but never mind that. We have a Dodge to stick a ridiculous engine in it. To be fair, I do love their enthusiasm when it comes to this thing. As far as it goes to drive, this does not drive as you'd expect it to drive. You'd expect it to be absolutely atrocious through the corners and really very quick on the straights. It's not quite as quick as you'd expect, but the trade-off is it doesn't handle quite as bad as you'd think. Granted, it's still a bit of a boat. The suspension's kind of soft. The brakes are kind of naff. But it's actually not as bad as I expected it to be. It's actually better than the Hellcat to drive, at least from what I remember the Hellcat handling like. Yeah, the Demon, not a terrible car. On to the leaderboard then, and the fastest car today was the Shelby GT350R, going to 55th place with 118.741, but just underneath it is the Chevrolet Camaro ZL1, going to 56th place with 118.767. Those cars are pretty close to each other on the leaderboard. I mean, by every measurable metric, the Camaro should be faster. It's better statistically, but the GT350R just handles that much better. Bear in mind, most of those cars beat premium sports cars. They really are that good these days. In 76th place, we find the Shelby GT500 with a 120.550, beats out a BMW M6 C63S Coupe, which is actually, those cars are pretty comparable to that because they don't handle particularly well, but they're quick. The GT500 is the better of those cars, though. In 80th place, we find the Dodge Demon 120.933, goes in between an old Mercedes F1 car and a Ferrari 250 LM. I really would not expect anything different of the Dodge Demon. Yeah, that car is it's an odd puppy, that one. In 85th place, we find the Cadillac CTS-V sedan with 121.401, breaking in between two Ferraris, the F355 Berlinetta and the 612 Scaglietti. The HSV Commodore Gen F GTS goes into 93rd place with 122.272, slightly beats out a Jeep Grand Cherokee Trackhawk, a little bit slower than a Dodge Challenger Hellcat. Honestly, if that car was as quick as it should be on paper, it would be higher up the leaderboard. It probably would have taken out that Cadillac even, yeah, but unfortunately not quite as good as that. In 101st place, we find the Ford Falcon GTF 351 with 122.907, slightly slower than a 2007 GT500, which is pretty interesting. Yeah, unfortunately that car just was a little bit disappointing. Still not a bad time from it overall, though. And finally today, the slowest car today, unsurprisingly, was the Pontiac G8 GXP, going to 118th place with 124.737, goes in between a Ferrari 250 Testarossa and a Lancia Delta S4 road car. Yeah, that car sort of was the underdogger today. It did have a lot less power than anything else, but I decided to chuck it in because it is interesting, and I quite like the G8, and yeah, it didn't do too bad, in all honesty. And that's just the general thing of today. These modern muscle cars really are actually quite quick these days. I know the Demon is still stupid. I know the GT500 is still antiquated, but if you actually look at the mainline cars, your GT350R, the Camaro, the CTS, they're all just so much better cars than they used to be. And the joke about American cars not being able to go around corners and whatever, that just isn't true these days. These cars prove that that they really can take on corners with the absolute best of them these days. Anyways, thank you all very much for watching my series on muscle cars. Next week, not quite sure what we're going to be looking at yet, so stay tuned for it nonetheless. Also, as a quick little update, Forza Top Gear Laps is now moving to Tuesday. It's no longer going to come out on Friday because that's Horizon 4 DLC day. So, Tuesday is the day where you'll find Forza Top Gear Laps now. Thank you all very much for watching, and until next time, farewell. It doesn't matter what you do or say, just forget